We are the Green Beans, and welcome to our presentation, Buddhism versus Climate Change. When environmental concerns were first introduced to the public eye in the 1970s, millions of people around the world scoffed at the idea what they were doing in their everyday lives could potentially cause the end of the Earth. The year is now 2023, and as these concerns grow larger in size, the issue of climate change is at its critical point of no return. It is essential that now, as a society, people understand the diverse applications that Buddhism can have for environmentalism and the fight against climate change. This presentation will consist of 4 parts. Part 1, Sustainable Development Goal 13 or SDG 13. Part 2, The Challenges of SDG 13. Part 3, Buddhism and SDG 13. And Part 4, Tampa Bay and Buddhism's connection with SDG 13. According to an article written for BBC, in 1975, US scientist Wallace Broecker first put the term global warming into the public domain in the title of a scientific paper. Although this issue was not taken seriously at the time, the environmental harm that humans have caused to the oceans, the land, and the atmosphere was already astronomical. In the 1990s, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, produced its first assessment report. The report concludes that temperatures have risen by 0.3 to 0.6 degrees over the last century. The findings in this report made it clear that human-made carbon emissions are adding to the Earth's atmosphere and is a natural complement of greenhouse gases. As a consequence, the global temperature has risen 1.1 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial level, causing glaciers to melt and sea levels to rise. With these rising sea levels comes flooding, drought, and the displacement of millions of people. It would plunge them into poverty and deprive them with access to essential services such as education and limit economic progress. It would essentially cause worldwide ruin. This is why the United Nations created Sustainable Goal 13. It is a global-wide initiative whose mission is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its devastating impacts. It is the key to making the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 goals, the blueprint for a better future, a reality.
Hi guys, my name is Neri Patel and I'm going to be discussing the challenges of SDG 13. Next slide, please. Implementing any policy on a worldwide scale is a huge effort in and of itself. Nevertheless, when it comes to policies involving a danger whose consequences are not immediately perceived, the task becomes much more difficult. Although the climate change issue is being treated more seriously than it was previously, it still does not undo the decades of environmental harm that we together as a society and as humans have already done. The implementation of any policy on global scale is already a monumental task on its own. However, when it comes to policies that involve a threat whose effects are not immediately felt, the task becomes even harder. Countries need massive amounts of money in order to implement policies that will allow them to play catch up and save this planet. This is currently an economic crisis that has engulfed the globe, leaving many nations on the verge of financial ruin. This recession has already made it difficult to get commitments from stakeholders to satisfy financial demands. Next slide, please. Many nations, as well as their people, believe that there are more pressing concerns to deal with at this moment, so their time and resources are being used to combat those issues. This has caused another challenge in achieving coordination between the stakeholders and the policies and that they would be funding. Since the people at the very top of the chain are unable to make change, it is up to the rest of the humanity to contribute to environmentalism. This is where Buddhism comes in as an essential tool in the fight against climate change.
Hi everyone, my name is Shania Rodriguez and I'll be talking about objective number 3, Buddhism and how it relates to SDG number 13. Next slide. Oh my gosh. Give me 1 second. With the environment being an integral factor in the path to enlightenment, it is only natural that Buddhists are invested in the fight against climate change to save Earth. Buddha teaches to think and act in an environmental sensitive manner. a concept monks follow through the practice of meditation. It helps to diminish consumerist inclinations and hence their carbon footprint, amongst other things. Buddhists live in a nonviolent and compassionate life in order to reduce environmental damage, not only respecting the environment, but caring for it as well. Practitioners believe that when we apply the principle of Buddhist causation to the entire world, the individual is no longer seen as a separate being divorced from environmental concerns, because humans are interconnected with all of nature. And with that, Buddhist leaders and Buddhist communities believe they play an important role for fighting the good fight and will determine the planet's future. For example, Tenzin Gyatso, known as the 14th Dalai Lama, is considered by his followers to be the earthly manifestation of an enlightened one and is a known supporter of climate change. In an interview with Channel News 4 and The Guardian, he appealed to world leaders to take urgent action against climate change, warning of ecological destruction affecting the lives of billions and ruining the planet, including his birth country, Tibet. These are climate change actions taken by perhaps the most famous Buddhists in the modern day. Next slide.
Hi, my name is Jalisha Connor, and I'm going to be doing objective number 4, Tampa Bay and Buddhism, and its connection with SDG 13.
Next slide, please.
Global warming has quickened the rise of sea levels throughout the planet due to human consumption of fossil fuels, which causes the temperature to rise, which then causes the ice to melt. And because this impact of global warming is damaging, and if this domino effect continues, the sea level could rise anywhere between 11 to 31 inches. According to Tampa Bay meteorologist Grant Gilmore, if emissions are not reduced, the United States coast may witness the sea level rising up to 7 feet.
Slide, please.
On this next slide, we can see a little bit about how the local Buddhists and their action towards climate change. Local Buddhists in the Tampa Bay have joined the fight against climate change by forming a Tampa Bay branch of the Global Buddhist Climate Action Network. The purpose is to draw together Buddhists and their friends and families from all traditions to act on climate change while incorporating Buddhist practices and principles. Together, they have created a network of climate activists who are rooted in practices of interconnectedness, basic goodness, compassion, and healing to work with other Florida climate action groups on some of Tampa Bay's issues, like energy policy, climate change education, conservation, adaptation, and other effective climate actions.
Faith-based organizations are many that people could contribute the fight for the future of planet Earth. According to the article from National Resources Defense Council, Americans on average produce 21 tons of carbon a year, about 4 times the global average. The biggest step that people can take to reduce their carbon footprint is to buy a fuel-efficient vehicle. Gas, smart cars, such as hybrids, not only save fuel, but they also save money, as well as in the long run. Once all cars and light trucks meet 2025's clean car standards, Americans will spend $80 billion less at the pump each year and cut their automatic emission by half, Denchak says. It is understandable that many Americans cannot afford a new vehicle. However, there are still things that people can do in their everyday lives to help with the environment. In the United States, the average person generates 4.5 pounds of trash every day. By taking the time each day to reduce their waste by reusing things such as plastic bags, people could lessen the impact this amount of trash could have when it's just sitting in a landfill. When it is clear that an object can no longer be reused, then it should always be recycled if applicable. Overall, the number one most important thing that people can do to help is stay informed. realize that Earth is a living, breathing resource and we only get one chance with it. The harm that people are doing is getting to the point of being irreversible, so by simply doing some research, they can spread information needed to save the environment. In conclusion, Buddhism, compassion-based roots and beliefs is the perfect tool in fighting against climate change. This is because nature is closely associated with all major points in the path to enlightenment. Their core beliefs, such as their vow to non-violence against all life, are able to motivate them to be incredibly environmentally conscious. Its respect for the earth and everything on it makes this religion the perfect ally to have in the face of grave environmental issues. Locally in Tampa, the melting ice caps are causing the rising sea levels to rise at a rate that would devastate anyone living in the coastline when a storm surge happens. If people were to stay on this path, it would lead to astronomical property damage as flooding becomes worse and more people lose their homes. All is not lost. However, because local Buddhist faith-based organizations have taken up arms to make sure the communities are environmentally conscious and to inform them of the dangers causing further harm to the earth. Next slide, please.
With the help of Buddhism, the fight for planet Earth has never looked more hopeful. Thank you for listening to our presentation.